Basically, if it tastes good, spit it out. So that's something we should address.
That's what Jack LaLanne said in the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you have to like retrain your palate to appreciate good foods. And like I think that's like salt is something that people I think that's one of those things that we think of. We think it's bad, but you've talked about how salt is actually really good, and most people are deficient in it, and it's it's a super important electrolyte and mineral for us to have. And so
it's important, but I want to emphasize that more sodium is not what's needed. It's more potassium and not less sodium. So that potassium sodium balance is important. And instead of saying bring down the sodium, the other option is to bring up the potassium, which is actually a better way to do it.
And potassium is salty, right? Like it's a salt.
Yeah, but it tastes funny. People don't usually like potassium salts.
But how are we going to increase our potassium?
Well, if you get the salt substitutes, you can increase potassium. Okay, so potassium is found in beans, peas, lentils. It's found in all vegetables and all fruits.
Bananas.
So you can't avoid potassium if you're eating fresh foods.
So if you get cramps in your muscles, like athletes you'll see playing football and then they're down and they're like getting their legs stretched, is that a potassium deficiency?
Sometimes it's potassium, sometimes it's magnesium. Those are the two more common ones.
Okay. Interesting. Have you found that people are deficient in potassium just as much as they are deficient in magnesium?
Yes. Yes, about the same. In fact, I test.
Welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. We're going to play a really fun game today. Guess where we are? That's what we're going to do. Everyone take a guess. Joe's wearing a Minnesota hoodie, but don't be deceived. I know where he is. And actually, if you were on our webinar a couple of weeks ago, you probably know where he is. You never know where Dr. Saunders is. It's always a mystery. And look, my background's blurred, so you have no idea where I am. All right. We're happy you guys are here. We hope you had a really good Christmas. Today, we're excited to get back to talking about all things type 2 and taking your questions. So just like we always begin, Dr. Saunders is going to do some teaching. We'll open up for your questions, probably the second half. And I just realized I got to change this one more time. But before we even talk about anything, I would love it if Dr. Saunders could just give us a disclaimer about why we need a disclaimer.
Okay, so we need a disclaimer so that people don't think that everything that we say here applies to them, because it may not apply to you. We're going to be talking about type 1 and type 2, mostly type 2, but people ask questions for type 1, type 1.5. And so I don't know what your numbers are. I don't know what your lab results are. So it's important that you take the information and ask the question, does this apply to me? And then that's how you get to come to understanding and apply it properly.
Great. All right. So let's start here with Joe. Joe, tell us where you are today.
I am in a undisclosed location here in Cave Creek, Arizona, at our the Healing House, the Oasis House. It's 50 degrees and rainy today, so don't be too jealous. So today's an inside day.
That's
okay.
You're
sitting on the floor.
I am sitting on the floor. Yeah.
Yes.
In the little room. My son Isaiah is over here. Hello.
Isaiah. Hello.
And we got others around in different places. And I was gonna say I had this crazy dream last night. It was interesting. My cousin, his wife is a pediatrician, and she told me I have a heart disease or impending heart attack. And so like this is a dream. So I'm thinking, and then I'm like thinking like half awake, like how do I know if my heart is healthy or not? And this might be a future topic we could talk about, Dr. Sagat, but it made me think just like with diabetes, like it's a lot easier to tell, like if you've got a problem with, your blood sugar and things like that, you can easily measure it. But how do you know if you have a healthy heart or not? And so I was thinking it's probably like if you get out of breath quickly. And then there's like different spectrums of heart health as well. It's not like sometimes it could be, it could be the artery issues or, clogged arteries or what's it called when it like congestive heart failure is a different type of heart issue.
Heart failure.
Yeah.
See, the problem with the heart is by the time you get symptoms, by the time you have shortness of breath or palpitations of your heart or exercise intolerance where you can't walk as far as you used to or go up the stairs all the way, by the time you get to that point, you're way into that heart disease. You're like, so I usually test people. I do what's called a coronary calcium score. And that's a score of how much calcium is in the arteries. They actually take the heart and look at the arteries around the heart, called the coronary arteries, and they measure how much calcium is in those arteries. And the ideal is 0. You actually want to be 0. If you have more than 0, then you have some. If you have a lot, if you're in 400, then you have a lot. And so that just gives me an idea of where somebody is to see what kinds of treatments will do for their heart.
So with type 2 diabetes or any diabetes, like it's one of the leading causes of heart attacks, is it, or heart disease, or what's the correlation there?
Heart disease, yes. Diabetes type 2 is highly correlated with heart disease. Yes.
Heart disease. And heart disease is, what's the difference, or what is that exactly?
Well, heart disease, coronary artery disease is where the arteries are getting clogged with deposits of cholesterol and calcium and all that. Okay,
got it. Yeah, something we don't want.
But also congestive heart failure, where you're not getting enough energy to the heart, and then arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation. That's all that all goes with heart disease, and that all is related to type 2 as well.
Mm-hmm. We don't always like to be doom and gloom, but it is a serious condition, and it's good to remind ourselves why we do this. Why do we only eat 20 or 40 grams of carbs a day? Why do we exercise? Why do we, go to bed on an empty stomach at 10 o'clock? Because we don't want to have heart failure, heart attacks, strokes, lose our...
I've never seen any research on this, but I'm pretty sure that if all you did in your life, if all you did was separate your carbs from your proteins and fats, so you can have protein and fat together. And if you think of the big picture of the way natural foods are. So if you eat meat, you have protein and fat, no carbs. If you eat fruit, you're getting carbohydrates, no protein and fat. Avocado, there's a fruit, but it's high in fat, but very low in carbohydrates. Nuts and seeds, you're getting more protein, less carbohydrate. There's some fat in there, little carbohydrate. And except for grains, which are they're starchy, they have a lot of carbohydrate, but very little fat in them. So if you look at nature, and if we just ate in a sort of a natural way, so you have all of your carbohydrates are separated. So, if you love carbs, I'm not saying this for phase 1. You really need to do phase 1. I'm just saying as a general dietary idea for people that don't have type 2. Or even if you do have type 2, but you've gotten into phase 3, you might try this. And that is separate them. So things that you would never eat would be things like French fries, because high in fat, high in carbs. You avoid that. Pizza, high in fat, high in carbs. You avoid that. But you can eat, meat and vegetables. And then you could have a baked potato at a different meal, but your baked potato is not going to have sour cream or butter on it. You're gonna spice your baked potato instead of putting fat on it. So just separating your fat from your carbs, I'll bet if that's all we did, that we wouldn't get toxic with so much type 2 that we see around.
So are you saying separate them at meals? So for one meal, you could have carbs only, and the next meal you could have protein and fat only?
Yeah. So one meal you might have, I don't know, beans and then with vegetables. And then another meal you could have a salad and a baked potato or a sweet potato. And then a different meal, you would have fish and broccoli. And so you could have your fat and vegetables, and then your carbohydrates with vegetables. But you wouldn't have them at the same time. So you wouldn't have a baked potato and a steak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Neither of those, well, that doesn't include cookies and ice cream at any meal though. So that's
No, because cookies are high in fat, high in carbs. That
Yep.
wouldn't even be on your list.
yeah,
Ice
so
cream,
really
high in fat, high in carbs. That wouldn't even be on your list.
right.
So
So you're getting rid
You
of the
just
junk
never
food.
eat those.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. We might have to come up with maybe a modification like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that. So well, good stuff.
I'm
Well,
thinking, and we got to have a name for this because there is a zone diet that is it's you don't eat certain things with certain things, you stay in the zone, and that's something like that, but it's not as strict as what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like a strict like never eat carbs with protein or fat. You have
Mhm.
protein and fat together, and then you have carbs at a separate meal. That would be my idea.
So it's kind of like a setting apart the macronutrients. So you can only eat this here, and then but over here you can have this. You just can't ever mix them to. So it's like kind of a separated. I was just thinking about the word. If we wanted to get religious a little bit here, holy. Holy means set apart. It could be the holy diet. Sanctified part. I don't know. We're open to ideas. Hey, we got 80 some people watching with us. Anybody have any ideas for what we're talking about? Feel free. We're just using our creativity right now. So, but
There is a program I think called Trim Healthy Mama where they do something similar to that, and it'd be fun. Some of you, first of all, when we're talking about different phases, if the diabetes solution kit is new to you, oh boy, we got the blur on.
Blurry.
That help?
Nope.
No, I'll have to take the blur off. If you've gone through this and you're past phase 2 and you want to try this, email me. You want to try something different. It'd be fun to see how it works for you as soon as we get it all together. But let me know if you're interested. I know there's a few of you on here who I'm going to guess are going to jump.
It's food sorry, it's food combining. Yeah, there's various ways of doing that, food combining. But
Awesome.
but I would think of it more on a strict basis than most of the food combining programs.
Yeah, you could put recipes together for that. So John, basically, if it tastes good, spit it out. So that's something we should address.
That's what Jack LaLanne said in the 1950s.
Yeah. Well, and that's where you have to like retrain your palate to appreciate good foods. And like I think that's like salt is something that people I think that's one of those things that we think of. We think it's bad, but you've talked about how salt is actually really good, and most people are deficient in it. And it's it's a super important electrolyte and mineral for us to have. And so
it's important, but I want to emphasize that more sodium is not what's needed. It's more potassium and not less sodium. So that potassium sodium balance is important. And instead of saying bring down the sodium, the other option is to bring up the potassium, which is actually a better way to do it.
And potassium is salty, right? Like it's a salt.
Yeah, but it tastes funny. People don't usually like potassium salts.
But how are we going to increase our potassium?
Well, if you get the salt substitutes, you can increase potassium. Okay, so potassium is found in beans, peas, lentils. It's found in all vegetables and all fruits.
Bananas.
So you can't avoid potassium if you're eating fresh foods.
So if you get cramps in your muscles, like athletes you'll see playing football and then they're down and they're like getting their legs stretched, is that a potassium deficiency?
Sometimes it's potassium, sometimes it's magnesium. Those are the two more common ones.
Okay. Interesting. Have you found that people are deficient in potassium just as much as they are deficient in magnesium?
Yes. Yes, about the same. In fact, I test, I've tested thousands of people for intracellular potassium, because if you just measure the blood potassium, your kidneys are keeping that stable no matter what. It's the intracellular potassium that tells you if you're deficient or not. And I find my guess would be around 50%, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But yeah, half of people are deficient in potassium.
So eat more beans and lentils and things like that.
Fruits and vegetables, beans and lentils. Mm-hmm. And avocados have a lot of potassium in them, like 800 milligrams. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. Everybody says eat bananas, but bananas really only have 400 milligrams. Like ounce for ounce, bananas have a lot, but one banana is about 400. An orange is about 300. An avocado, like I said, is around 800. A baked potato is around 800 too. So yeah, so any fresh foods, fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm. When you cook foods like vegetables, if you roast them versus eating them raw, like is it different for different vegetables on like which nutrients are enhanced or eradicated?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah, because like let's say carrots. If you eat a raw carrot, raw carrots are good for you, a lot of fiber, right? And but if you eat a raw carrot, your sugar content is a little less because as you cook the carrot, you're breaking down the starches into more simple sugars, more simple starches. But at the same time, you also release more of the beta carotene. So you actually get more vitamin A from a cooked carrot than a raw carrot. And the other thing is, you can take a raw carrot, and you can eat so much raw carrot. I don't know how many, one or two of them, but cooked carrots, you can eat 3 or 4 or 5. You can eat twice as much cooked carrots, so you're getting more of the nutrition, like the vitamin A nutrition, than you would from a raw carrot. Mm-hmm. So other things are like that too, where you break down the starches to release some of the nutrients in them, and things like green vegetables, not so much. And you have to be careful because cooked things destroys vitamin C primarily.
You get your vitamin C more from raw vegetables and fruits.
Yeah.
So what about bananas? We've heard about green bananas can actually be healthy, but the ripened bananas, not so much.
Well, the ripened bananas, since a banana has seeds in it, it's got lectins, it's got a lot of starch, and the starches break down into simple sugars as it ripens. That's why it's sweeter. If you eat a green banana, it's hardly sweet at all. It's it's just a little starchy, but there really isn't a lot of sugar and starch. As they ripen, then you're getting more of the sugar. So in a sense, yes, the green bananas are better, especially if you're looking at type 2 diabetes and you're looking at blood sugar and you want to decrease your carb count, to 20 grams a day. You're better off not eating bananas at all in that kind of a case.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see like the carb amount in a green banana through a yellow banana in that spectrum or whatever, what the difference might be. So
yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know that I've ever seen that.
It's interesting too, because like in the specific carbohydrate diet or those types of things, I say to eat the bananas when they are like overripe. But if you're having it with your green, it can be harder for people to digest, I guess.
Who says to eat them overripe?
When I was looking into the specific carbohydrate diet, which is primarily for people with Crohn's and colitis and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's a lot of information about bananas that you guys didn't know you were going to get today.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. Actually, but before we go on, I'm going to take my blur off. The only reason I have the blur on was just because the sun was shining in here, but this is the diabetes solution kit. If you're new, this is what we are often talking about. We mentioned the different phases of the diabetes solution kit, and they're all in this lovely book where you will find information about what to eat. There are recipes, how this lifestyle works. And many of you on this webinar right now are doing this, have done this. Lots of you have shared your success with this. And basically, this is what Dr. Saunders recommends to his patients that come to him with type 2. And so this is what our webinars are all about. We kind of started with some different questions and different things this time, but a lot of times we're talking specifically about type 2 right away and referencing this book quite often. So just wanted to make sure I address that. This can be found at Barton Nutrition. If you go to bartonwebinar.com, you will find a link to all of our past webinars, as well as this book and supplements, etc. All of the things that you'll probably hear mentioned. So that's a website you may want to pin. So I did post that in the chat, I think.
One of the things that we found was the book is online. So you download a copy and you have it immediately, and you can start on it right away. You can read it and everything right on your computer, done. Some people want a print copy. And so if you take the print copy, it costs twice as much as the other one. And people were called me and said, wait, why did I have to pay more for the print copy? Well, because it has to be printed and mailed to you. So
yes.
And the other one is just downloaded. So
and it's still not expensive.
Yeah,
so
$20.
Very cheap. Yeah, $20. So okay.
I think it's too cheap because, if people don't have to like hurt to say, oh, I really want to do this program, I'm going to pay $500 for that book. Then if they do pay $500 for the book, then they go, I'm going to do the program because I paid, so yep. I'm doing it. I used to have a program in my office where people paid. I guaranteed they would be free of diabetes in 6 months, and they paid $5,000 for the program. And I worked with them every day. I had a nutritionist, I had IV treatments, we had a health coach, a naturopathic doctor. We worked through all their other problems. It was, I think, a really good program. And definitely, I thought it was worth it. Yeah,
for sure.
But this is cheap.
Yes, and then you get the webinar at no cost. So
you get what you pay for.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into a few more questions here. I did see, someone has 4 feet of snow. I think they're in Boston. That's crazy. Okay. Sally had a good question. We were kind of talking about her heart, and Joe mentioned a dream that he had. Sally says, how do you know if your lungs are healthy also? My sister passed away after being diagnosed with lung cancer just 6 weeks earlier.
Oh yeah. See, that's another issue. Lung cancer, any lung problem, because your lungs, you have way more lung tissue than you need. If they were to remove one whole lung out, and you only had one, you'd function pretty much normally. You're not going to run a marathon, but you'd function normally. So, by the time you have any symptoms of loss of lung function, it's way, you're way down the line. So how do you know? If you have shortness of breath, chronic cough, if you start noticing that, gosh, I'm getting winded just walking up the stairs, one flight of stairs, and I'm getting winded. I never used to have that. Get that checked out, find out what it is. And what's really cool these days is you can do a simple lung test with an oximeter, and these oximeters that go on your finger, you can buy them for like $40 at any pharmacy. Excuse me. And if you're sitting and relaxing and you put it on and it's 95, and that's good. Anything over 95 is good. But then if you get up and walk and it drops down to 92, you may not notice that as shortness of breath, but that's an indicator that there's something wrong with your lungs. So those oximeters are actually in some ways more sensitive than x-rays for certain types of lung problems. So, that might be an investment to have checked periodically. And when you get sick and you have a cough and you want to know if you have pneumonia, you put that oximeter on. If it's reading 97, 98, no, you don't have pneumonia, you're good. You don't have to go to the hospital. But if it's reading 85, yeah, you got to go to the hospital. You got something.
Okay, we're having a couple of questions about keto or low carb breads or low carb cookies. For example, Robert said that there's a new bread in Oregon that has 15 grams of carbs and 14 grams of fiber. Is this real? Can we actually count one slice as one carb?
Yes. Yes, you can. They actually do use fiber. They use inulin mostly, but they have, so it is a type of fiber or types of fiber that they use that are not digestible, and they're not broken down into sugars. And they do feed the good bacteria in your intestines. So, I don't have a problem with them at all. The issue might come around to be careful with is the taste of sweet. So the cookies, for example, if they taste sweet and they have whatever monk fruit extract or stevia or whatever other type of sugar alcohol or something, then you want to avoid that while you're in phase 1. And, we talk about that in phase 1, don't eat sweet things, just avoid sweet things altogether, because the artificial sweeteners for many people, not for everyone, but for many people, cause elevated insulin, which causes more insulin resistance. And, when they studied diet drinks versus regular sodas, diet sodas versus regular sodas, people gained more weight on the diet sodas than they did on the regular sodas because of that super sweet, saccharin sweet taste causes a release of insulin, and insulin's the hormone that tells your body to put on fat.
Okay. Let's see. Seshadri says, I have type 2 and CKD3. I would like to know what to eat, which are good for both. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. CKD3 means chronic kidney disease, level 3 or stage 3. Stage 3 means she's already bumped her creatinine level up, her estimated glomerular filtration rate has gone down below 60. And so with that creatinine level higher or the GFR a little low, that means that's no longer normal kidney function. And again, most people have 2 kidneys, and we have way more kidneys than we need. If we take one kidney out, the other one's going to work just fine. So by the time you get to this level, you've lost a lot of kidney function. Okay, so that's the preview of what we have. So type 2 chronic kidney disease, the first thing you want to do is get your blood sugar normal. Get your insulin down to normal, blood sugar normal. You want insulin resistance to be as 0 as possible to maintain your kidney function. So do phase 1 of the program until you have a normal test. When you test, insulin should be around 5 on a fasting specimen, while the fasting blood sugar should be between 70 and 90. So if you're in that range, then that's the starting point of protecting your kidneys. Next thing is to take a half a teaspoon of baking soda every day. I've read studies where this actually does make a difference. And there's been a lot of studies. And what's really interesting, many of you probably even have heard of alkaline water. And some of you probably even have a machine that you spent a whole bunch of money on that makes alkaline water. But we don't know if that works. We know the baking soda works because that's what the research was done on. And so the half a teaspoon of baking soda in a cup of water, or a half a cup of water, makes it an alkaline pH because baking soda is alkaline. And so the alkaline water studies were mostly done with the baking soda and water. And the alkaline water per se, I don't know. So people often ask me, I buy the bottled water that's alkaline water. I'm like, well, that's okay. But if my kidneys were in jeopardy, if I was already borderline functioning on my kidneys, like stage 3, for example, I would take a half a teaspoon of baking soda in water, even if there was alkaline water or whatever, because there's more to the baking soda than just being alkaline. You're adding carbonate, which is something that the kidney, you breathe out So it's made into carbon dioxide in the body. And so I think I don't know that it's different, and I don't know that the alkaline water isn't okay, but man, if your kidneys are in jeopardy, do the baking soda, because we know that works.
Question was when should I take the baking soda?
Oh, good question. Once a day. It's just like a half a teaspoon and half a cup of water, or whatever juice. I tried it. It tastes horrible. I don't do it every day. I don't do it often. But I don't like the taste of it. But all right. I don't know. I can put it in something you like. Smoothie.
There you go. That might change the taste of it a little, but that's okay.
I gotta head out, everybody. I'm gonna say bye-bye.
All right. Bye, Joe.
Thank you. See ya.
Roy says, sometimes I find that my thinking isn't as clear as I would like it to be. I'm wondering if my diet has an impact on my mental clarity and memory recall.
Absolutely. Thank you. That is a really good question, because there's two reasons for that. One is your blood sugar is too low. So if your blood sugar gets, if like, let's say, for example, you're doing our program and your blood sugar is normally in the 200s. It's like always in the 200s. And so you start on phase one and it's getting down into the 120s, 110s, and your body's not used to that. And you don't have enough of the glucose transport proteins to get the sugar in with that low blood sugar. Now your brain won't work right. And kidneys and heart too can be affected by this. So the dropping of the blood sugar, even if it's normal in quotes, the difference, because your body's used to having 200s and now it's in the 100s, can cause that. But that's temporary, and you shouldn't worry about that so much, because what you're doing then is, over time, it takes days to stimulate those glucose transport proteins to bring sugar into the brain at a higher rate, so that you can tolerate the lower blood sugar. And then the one is that your blood sugar is just too low. The other one is that you actually don't have enough glucose transport proteins, and because they diminish as your blood sugar is high. And so the sugar isn't getting into your brain. Your brain has to live on sugar. And so we always talk about how bad sugar is, bad. But it's not bad. Your brain needs it like a constant supply. And if you don't have it, well, I don't know if you've ever had, my father-in-law was acting kind of weird. He was saying weird stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? He has diabetes, type 2. Well, probably now type 1. And he had taken some insulin, and his blood sugar had dropped, and we checked it. It was in the 30s. Well, actually, I didn't check it. We called the paramedics. The paramedics came and checked. It was in the 30s. And so if you've ever had low blood sugar, you'll know that your brain just doesn't work. Well, that's what can happen from having high blood sugar for a long period of time, is you decrease those glucose transport proteins to have fewer of them. So they're bringing sugar in at a slow rate into your brain, and your brain's going, dude, I'm starving here. And it drives the blood pressure up. It makes you hungry. It causes all these other problems. Like it's a vicious cycle, right? Once you start having those lower glucose transport proteins. So yes, that brain issue is really important. And the answer to it is kind of paradoxical. And that is, you want to get low blood sugar. You want to get your blood sugar into the 70s, even like 60s would be okay. 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And keep it in there as much as possible, so that you increase the number of glucose transport proteins, so you get energy into your brain. The other way, okay, so I just thought of something else. The other way to do it, and a lot of people do this when they have that brain fog, is go on a ketogenic diet. Guess what that is? It's phase 1 of our program. So just do phase 1 on a ketogenic diet. And as you're making ketones, and if you want, you could measure ketones. There's a monitor that you can use, or the urine. And you can, and then you can measure, because the ketones don't need transport proteins. They go directly through the blood-brain barrier right into the brain, and your brain can use them for energy. So that's another possibility.
Very interesting. Good stuff. Okay. Let's see. Someone had asked about synochroma. And you know what? Actually, before we do this, let's have just a quick couple-minute discussion on how the diabetes solution kit works, what is in it, and how does that affect type 2 diabetes? What is happening in the body? Because we haven't really talked about what type 2 is necessarily and why this helps.
Okay. So if you look at type 2 as what it really is, because the doctors, and we're taught in medical school that type 2 diabetes is high blood sugar. But that's not really the underlying problem. The underlying problem is that all of the cells are filled up with sugar. So when the cells are filled up with sugar, they stop making glucose transport protein. They stop making insulin receptors, which are glucose transport protein, because they say, we're full, we don't need any more sugar, so we're done. And so normally there's receptors on there that the insulin comes and binds to it and goes, okay, you can bring sugar in. But if you don't have any, then the insulin comes along, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. So your insulin level goes up and saying, I got to get rid of this sugar somehow, but nobody's taking sugar in. Nobody wants any. So we don't want what you're selling. The insulin level goes up, and then the blood sugar level is going up and up and up. Why? Because nobody's bringing it in. We're done. We have plenty. We have enough. So it's a toxicity of sugar, and so the cells are full of sugar, and then the blood level goes up. But even before the blood level goes up, your cells can be full of sugar, and you could be losing kidney. You can be getting kidney damage, brain damage, heart damage, way before your blood sugar level goes up, because the insulin level is going up, and it's forcing more sugar into the cells, and the cells are going, it's too much, and some of them die. If you ever heard of fatty liver disease, dead cells, that's all it is. They're dying from, they're just stuffed too full of glycogen. So the answer is really simple. If you understand that they're stuffed too full, you got to unstuff them. So that's what the diabetes solution kit is all about. We've chosen this as one option because it applies more generally to more people than the other options. There are other options. Exercise is a good option for improving sugar. The drug companies have their options. There's one called Mastering Diabetes program, which is just the opposite. It's a no-fat diet. We allow fat, but we don't allow carbs. They allow carbs, but no fat. That's why I think that diet where you just don't mix your carbs and fats would be good. Anyway, so we've chosen the ketogenic diet, as a way of clearing all that sugar out of the cells, so that the cells go, hey, we need more sugar. And then they will start making those glucose transport proteins, insulin proteins, so that they can bring sugar in. Then the insulin comes along and goes, oh boy, I'm happy. And so your insulin level goes down and the blood sugar level goes down because the cells are bringing it in again. So that's what the diabetes solution kit is about. The program is detoxing from all that sugar. That's really as simple as it gets.
Isidore, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, says if the cell is compromised, then how do we address that problem? Does fasting address the problem?
Yes, that's something that we don't talk about in our book because there are issues with fasting. Now, I'm a proponent of fasting, and Leslie will tell you this. Pretty much, I've had people tell me, well, you just tell everybody to fast. Well, if everybody's toxic, then you need to detox somehow. How do you detox? Fasting is a wonderful way to detox. It is like no other. In fact, the fasting mimicking programs and all these, the juice fast and the this fast and the that fast, aren't nearly as good as actually fasting. Because even like in the animal studies, the rats that ate, that had no food or water, and that means like empty stomach. The longer you have an empty stomach, the better off you'll be, period. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts. The more you have an empty stomach, the better off you are. The fewer diseases you have, the longer you'll live, and the more you'll keep your energy, the more you'll keep your brain function. Everything is going to work better if you have an empty stomach. So more is better. And that's what I can say about fasting. And yeah, it's great. But why don't we just tell everybody, just quit eating? Well, because there are so many caveats to it. Well, that's if your insulin isn't too high and you stop eating and you have this high insulin, then your blood sugar is dropping too low, and then you end up in the hospital. And so, there's just so much care that has to be taken when you're fasting. And most of the people that I work with that have diabetes that want to fast, I work up. So you start with a 12-hour fast, and then you do a 15-hour fast, and then you're eating one meal a day, and then you're eating one meal every other day. And then, you work up, so to speak, to fasting.
Okay, so now you guys kind of understand why the Diabetes Solution Kit exists, how type 2 works. The next question that came in was someone wanted to know how to use Synachroma, and can Synachroma itself eliminate diabetes? Because this is one of our products as well.
The answer is yes and no. So my first answer is no, meaning don't count on it. That's not the program. The program is not to go out and buy Synachroma and keep eating what you're eating. The program is to go on phase 1, cut out the carbs, detox your body. And so then why do we have Synachroma? Well, it's because I've tested thousands of people, and the majority, literally a majority, are deficient in everything that you need to use your blood sugar properly. Chromium, vanadium, selenium, vitamin D, vitamin K. Because there's such common deficiencies, I said to Joe, hey, we need something that people with diabetes can take, because these other supplements, they would have to take this one that has, 50 ingredients with a bunch of herbs, and this one that has the selenium, and they would have to buy a whole bunch of things. I said, I want one that has the right amounts of each thing in it. And so, the vitamin D isn't just like a 1,000 units or, microgram quantities. It's 5,000 units. It's a full day's supply. And that's what's going to help sensitize your insulin receptors. So yes, it's a help. And can it cure diabetes? Well, no, unless there are cases of people with chromium deficiencies that have diabetes because of the chromium deficiency. If that's the case, it will cure diabetes.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question about Synachroma too, then, is when do you take Synachroma?
Just take one in the morning before breakfast. That's fine.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Good questions, guys. This is good. Carol wants to know what your feelings are on the drug glyburide for controlling blood sugar.
So glyburide is a sulfonylurea, and it's a medication that tricks your pancreas into making extra insulin. So think about this. You have your cells jam-packed full of sugar, your blood sugar's high, your insulin level's high. Now you take a medication that raises the insulin levels. Does that make any sense to you? No, it doesn't make any sense. That's not the right thing to do. So for type 2, it's actually a backwards problem. And it's the opposite that you want. So the problem with glyburide is it's going to raise your insulin, cause more insulin resistance, because, I talk about, nobody wants any sugar to come in. They don't make insulin receptors. They always have a few insulin receptors on the cells. It's a fluid thing. There's, instead of thousands of them, they have hundreds of them, for example. So, you decrease it by a factor of 10. So you have all this insulin that doesn't have anywhere to go. So you add more insulin and you're going to stuff the cells more, and you're going to get more toxicity and more insulin resistance. So I don't agree with that medication. I don't see any use for that medication at all.
All right. I think we did another question here too. Someone was mentioning they're on, okay, so I have type 2 diabetes and I'm on metformin 2 per day and Levemir 25 units per day. What are your thoughts on those? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so Levemir is insulin, and the metformin So the metformin is something that helps you to start using fat for energy. And I don't really have a problem with metformin. It's okay. And I look at it as a temporary thing that you can do this metformin on a temporary basis. While you're doing the program, while you're in phase 1, you can still be on metformin, but not insulin. You shouldn't be using insulin. So on someone that's using insulin, then the next step is to do a test, because they probably didn't do the test in advance. So now you have to do a test called a C-peptide, that C-peptide. And that C-peptide level is something that tells you how much your pancreas is making. So if you just did an insulin level, then your levomir is going to include with that, and you don't know how much you're making and how much you injected from the levomir. So but the C-peptide tells you just what your pancreas is putting out, and that'll tell you whether you need the levomir or not. So if your C-peptide level is 4, then for heaven's sakes, that's really high. That's way too much insulin, and you certainly don't want to be taking any extra insulin. And then, but if your C-peptide is 0.5, then you might need some insulin. So, you have to weigh that depending on what your needs are.
Okay. Question. Somebody's wondering how they can book a consultation with you.
Call the office, 805-588-7171.
Okay. And I'll post that in the chat if someone wants to get a hold of you. Okay. Oh, such good stuff here. This is so interesting. Edward says that he puts 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda in with the coffee grounds when he makes a pot of coffee. And it also makes the coffee taste better. I would assume it takes some of the acid out of it.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. It will neutralize the acid. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I wonder if that helps. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. A couple questions about fiber greens, which is another product of ours. Actually, I think this was asked last time. Does it help to clear arteries? The
answer is no. the simple answer is no. Excuse me. Generally, high fiber is really good for helping to clear arteries. But a high fiber diet is helpful. High fiber, low fat diet is helpful. But the fiber greens, the purpose is to increase your fiber, to grow good bacteria, to improve the bowel function so that you don't get constipation or diarrhea, and just to increase the fiber because it's so hard to get your 40 grams a day.
And people love it. It's very good. Okay. Also, I should mention too, if you guys go to Barton Nutrition or Barton Webinar, you'll find our supplements. If you use the code webinar25, you will get 25% off. And Joe did post that in the chat, but it's a great deal for all of you who are on the webinar. Good question about fasting. Is there a type that you recommend? We did kind of talk about that a little bit, but maybe you want to share something else.
Okay, so the answer to that is the more you have an empty stomach, the better. So that's the bottom line. But there is like an optimum amount of time. So a 5-day fast is you get the greatest benefit for the amount of time you put into it with doing 5 days in a row. 3 days in a row is sort of a minimum. That's what it takes to switch from sugar burning metabolism to fat burning metabolism. So 3 days is 72-hour fast is pretty much what it takes to make the changes that you want. So 3 days is kind of a minimum for long-term fasting. 5 days is optimum, but you still get benefits from going longer. There was a book by, if you've ever heard of Upton Sinclair, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Jungle, about the meat industry. And he also did one on fasting, and most people don't know this. So 1 century ago, over 100 years ago, he wrote a book on fasting, and he called it The Fasting Cure, because this was before antibiotics, before any drugs have had any really benefit at all. And he could cure, he said, tuberculosis and the egg and the consumption and whatever, all the things that they had there for their disease. And anyway, but he would do 20, 30, up to 90-day fasts. So you got to figure you're going to lose a pound a day. So most people that I have had 30-day, well, every one of my patients who's done a 30-day fast has lost right around 30 pounds. Yeah, 28 to 30 pounds.
Let's see. Can we talk about taking the iodine when you're already on thyroid meds? Will it cause a problem? I have hypothyroid and I'm on Armour thyroid.
Okay, no, it won't cause a problem. Iodine is a necessary nutrient. You have to have it. And 90% of Americans are deficient in it, or even mildly deficient in it. And you need it more than just for the thyroid. You also need it for, like, if you're a woman, the enzymes that convert the estrogens from the active to the inactive form require iodine. So you have less breast cancer when you use iodine. It lowers your risk of breast cancer because of that enzyme. So there's more in the body that requires iodine than just the thyroid. And yes, it's a necessary nutrient. You have to have it to live.
Are you familiar with Balance of Nature products or
Yes.
And what is your opinion on them?
I think they're fine.
Okay.
They're very reasonable.
Okay. Is Synachroma good to take when you have CKD3?
So if you have chronic kidney disease, Synachroma is still good for that. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Emmanuel is asking if 72 hours of fasting without water, do you have a recommendation for food or supplement with high fiber?
Okay, so 72 hours without water. I often do that. I often do the 72 hours without water because the animal research pretty much showed that the 3 days of fasting, no food, no water, was a lot more beneficial than the ones who did water fasting. So literally a fast is an empty stomach. So what should you eat during the fast? Probably nothing at all. But if you're going to have something, some people have broth because it doesn't have any fiber. It doesn't have any carbohydrate in it. But after the fast, if you're finishing up the fast, what do? Man, get a lot of fiber. Yeah, just whatever. I chew on things like jicama and carrots. I get the little baby carrots and celery, and I just start eating that after a 72-hour fast.
All right. Let's see. Genevieve says type 2 and colon cancer. How can colon cancer be prevented? Recently had appendix burst caused by a tumor in the colon.
Okay. Prevention of colon cancer. That's really important. So Synachroma, several of the things in Synachroma decrease colon cancer. We talked about iodine. That's also going to be helpful. So iodine decreases the risk. Vitamin D as in dog decreases the risk of colon cancer. In fact, just vitamin D and selenium, which are both in Synachroma, vitamin D and selenium all by themselves will decrease your risk of colon cancer by approximately 50%. And that includes stomach cancers, liver cancers. It's not just colon, but all intestinal cancers. So it's quite dramatic. So getting a good level of vitamin D is useful. So vitamin D, selenium, iodine are the common ones, and then the other thing is a very high fiber diet. So the fiber in your diet makes something called butyrate, and butyrate is anti-inflammatory for the colon. And when you get the inflammation down, you decrease your risk of cancer dramatically. So I suspect someone with a very high fiber diet who has adequate levels of selenium, vitamin D, and iodine would probably never get colon cancer. You know, the risk of dying for colon cancer is 1 in 10,000. You know, of course, there's more people that get cancer that don't die from it, but
Yeah.
1 in 10,000. That's not a big risk. Not like breast cancer is really high. Like 1 in 10 women, approximately. The statistics vary, get breast cancer or have some kind of breast cancer statistically.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Melinda's asking about Jardiance medication. What are your thoughts?
Jardiance, again, it has the same issue of increasing insulin. So it increases insulin resistance over time. So yeah, it's a short-term solution, but you're creating a long-term problem. So it's not even a short-term solution for a long-term problem. You're actually making the problem worse over time. And so I take people off of that pretty quickly. As soon as, if someone that comes in on that medication, I take them off.
Okay. Let's see. William said he thinks that he found the solution to restoring testosterone. Just raising the level is not enough. His brother asked for help and he's going to try it too. They both eat cruciferous vegetables daily, but you would need 2 pounds daily to work. So he found Estro Cleanse Plus that has I3C and DIM to reduce estrogen, holy basil to reduce stress, and cortisol, and raises irisin, increasing muscle and fat loss. Chase tree berry to reduce prolactin. This should help. Any thoughts?
Well, the last statement is exactly right. This should help. Will it? I don't know. It might. You know what? I think eating the cruciferous vegetables every day is a better idea than taking the pills. And part of the reason is that in cruciferous vegetables, there's sulforaphanes, besides I3C and DIM. You know, you get a combination of factors that work together to repair your body, to fix things, to maintain levels of hormones. And you just get so much more out of the whole food than you do from taking a pill that has some isolated nutrient from it.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for questions today, guys. This was great. Went through a lot of information, and thank you, Dr. Saunders, for being here again. We will see you next week, and I believe we're going to be talking about high blood pressure next week. So we look forward to seeing you then.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
you then. Bye.
All right, guys, just a quick review here too. You once again can find the Diabetes Solution Kit at bartonwebinar.com. That's kind of our main hub where you'll find information, like a link to our YouTube channel, information on supplements, our top 10 most commonly asked questions. Our YouTube channel actually has all of our replays. They're a little bit behind right now, just waiting on some editing, but they'll be there soon. So head there, bartonwebinar.com. And again, remember, if you want to purchase any of the supplements, use code webinar25 to save 25% off. We will be back here next week, same time. Thank you guys for being here, and I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and have a happy new year. See you next week. Bye.